Good morning, Teach Better family. My name is Katie Miglin, and I'm here with Ray Hewert. We've got our coffee. We are so excited to wrap up this week's summer series of the journey and lesson planning. It has been so fun to talk through kind of all the little pieces of building a lesson. And today we are wrapping it up with Ray, and she's going to talk about goal setting and reflection, which we know is something that is just kind of like a big passion of hers. It was something that she did really well in the classroom. So we are excited to kind of dive into this topic. If you want to drop in the comments, if you're drinking coffee, water, or maybe you're working out, like what are you doing with your day right now? Because it's like mid-morning. So go ahead and drop something in the comments. I'm going to give you a commercial. We'll be right back. Okay, gonna be honest, I forgot that I was pressing the buttons.
Katie, we had an assignment. We had a plan. We logged on, and you specifically asked me to sit like this, and I wasn't allowed to touch any buttons. I'm not allowed to press commercials. I'm not allowed to press comments. I'm just here.
I know, and I said I was going to press them, and then I was like, oh crap, I don't have it ready. So sorry for the delay, but hey, welcome back.
It's amateur moment today. It's the third day, so it's like it's fitting. If it was the first day, red flag. Third day, meh.
Right. They've seen us have like 2 strong days. So like it's fine. Makes sense. All right. Well, good morning, everybody. If you are just now joining us, we are on day 3 of a 3-day journey through lesson planning. Tuesday, we covered day 1. We covered kind of how to kickstart your class, how to get students engaged and excited, set the culture of your time with kids, whether it's 45-minute, whether it's all day, whatever that looks like for you. Then yesterday, Ray and Chad went live and they talked all about the lesson, which is like the middle, kind of the meat and the potatoes, the content, and delivered such amazing value. And today we are going to wrap it up with goal setting and reflection, how students can kind of leave your class with next steps on how they can then come back to your class setting, your classroom, whatever it looks like, and kind of know what their next steps are to continue to progress on their learning journey. Here's what I've loved about this week though, right? Is we're not curriculum people, right? That's not what Teach Better is. We don't push a specific curriculum. All of the pieces can be applied to anyone in any setting. Wouldn't you agree?
Completely. And we emphasized that a ton yesterday. If you missed yesterday, you can catch it over on the Teach Better Team's YouTube or anywhere else we're streaming. We're streaming on LinkedIn and Facebook. You can go hunt those down as well. Yeah. But something I really knew that we had to emphasize, even though I was live with Chad and that like he just wanted to talk about the grid method. I was like, it doesn't matter how you teach. It doesn't matter what curriculum you're using, what program you're using, what technology you're using, what kind of students you have. There are key essentials that you have to have in your lesson that we know is best for students. Everything that we're discussing is research-based, and we're just trying to talk about obtainable, realistic ways to do it versus just saying, oh my gosh, make sure you do this big arching topic umbrella of an idea. How do you actually implement it like 20 minutes in? So it was a great conversation. And it's going to continue not only as we wrap up today, but also as many of you tune into the Cami webinar. We're doing a partnership with Cami, which if you're not familiar, is a great tech resource. And we're going to continue this conversation Monday, July 22nd, free registration, totally easy peasy hour conversation. There's so much planned, but it's going to be awesome. And it will, again, just get us thinking about how we can do this no matter where you teach and what you teach.
And it's perfect timing, right? We're end of July. Some of you are going to head back to the classroom in the next couple of weeks. Some of you have still a month. Obviously, we want you to rest, relax, and enjoy the last little bit of whatever summer you have. But this is like perfect timing because we know July is when teachers start to, their gears start moving. They start to think about like, okay, what is it going to look like when I go back? What are some small changes that can make a big impact? I know that's a big thing we focused on the first day of this week. So just lots of things to be thinking about. So even if you're like kind of in and out, maybe you're drinking tea on a sofa with a kitty like Sandy is, welcome. But if you're, if you're just kind of listening a little bit, maybe this is something you bookmark and you come back later and really think about how you can implement some of these things as you go back to the school year. Or maybe it's something you remind yourself and watch again in October where you're like, oh yeah, I need to refresh on this. So
completely. We joked about that yesterday where I'm like, friends, it's still the middle of July. Like if you're not ready to transition, that's okay. Pop us in and listen today as you're, cleaning up or headed to the pool, and then save this, make this the podcast episode you listen to on your first day of work to institute or something else. Like it's just a good reminder to keep these things in mind. Might as well set yourself up for success.
And it's super simple, like things you can change, like depending on what your space looks like, you could change some of these things literally within a couple days. So
yeah, nothing earth shattering, just a reminder of good practices. I love that stuff.
Yeah. So we are talking kind of the last bit of a lesson plan. So whether you're teaching kids all day long or whether you're teaching like just a set subject, like kind of envision whatever you want as far as the time. But we're talking about that end when we are wanting students to think about what have I done and what do I need to get ready to do. And so, Ray, it made complete sense that you were the expert on this because I know this is something that you implemented in a variety of different platforms in a variety of different ways. But I guess let's start with the very beginning. If someone's kind of like, I don't set goals and I don't provide any moment of reflection, but we all know we should and need to, what's our first things kind of that come to mind when you're like, this is why I do what I do. This is the importance of it.
Yeah, completely. When I graduated with my teaching certification and got my first teaching job, I knew I was supposed to have students goal set and reflect. But full transparency, I feel like I spent the first few years implementing it, and I'll be honest, it felt like a massive waste of time. I would do it daily or weekly or quarterly or at the end of the school year. And reflection and goal setting is important for students, but if it's not implemented with any thought, then it is a waste of time. And that's fine. So if you're not interested in implementing it, you might as well skip it and save yourself the time. There's a ton of value. This is a research supported practice, but you have to make sure you implement it well. So when I actually got my master's, this is what I did my thesis on, was looking at goal setting, not just in the value of what does it bring to students, but actually in the value of what different mediums and modalities can actually affect students' success in their goal setting and reflecting. So if we're just breaking down the basics, we are looking at a few different things today. And specifically at the end of a lesson, you want students to reflect, think through little ideas. What went well today? Mm-hmm. How do I feel about the content that I was exposed to? And then they need to set some sort of goal. And this can be anywhere from, 7 minutes, which feels really long, to like 1 minute. Like this, depending on how you want to roll this out, at what consistency, there can be a variety of time frames. But a goal that a student should set can be anything as long as they have control over it. So a struggle that I made, a challenge that I had early on, was I was having them goal set on academics, but they had no option of academics. I was teaching whatever I wanted the next day. They would have no say. So a goal of what they were going to learn tomorrow is actually not helpful. That's a waste of time. But we can talk all about this today, looking at goals that students can have on characteristics they want to possess in the classroom next, or maybe they have a question. And so their goal is, okay, when I walk in tomorrow, I'm going to be more vocal and ask that question that I have. And so we need to look at how we can make this work within our classroom. I know a lot of grid method teachers goal set and reflect at the end of every single day, at the end of every single learning period. That's what I'm going to always be an advocate for. But you don't always have to start there. There's lots of easy tips and tricks on where you can implement it slowly. And I'm sure we'll get into that as we dive in.
Yeah, I think you hit some like big kind of things to be mindful of when someone is thinking, okay, I like you said, exactly. I mean, you hit the nail on the head of, I know I should do this, but sometimes we fall short on that implementation where it's an actual constant, because the reality is I was the same way. It was like something I knew I should do, but I couldn't figure it out. And we know it's important. So Okay, so we've kind of talked through, it's important. We know that. Now let's figure out what do we do? How do we implement it? How do we get it to stick? So I know you kind of did a few different things throughout your journey in the classroom. So can you kind of walk us through some of the modalities, kind of some of those things you talked about in your thesis?
Yeah. So as we look at reflecting and goal setting, there's actually a few different times throughout your learning period with students that they can do this. The time frame is actually less important for the sake of this conversation. It's going to be so much more important that you know what you want to get out of it. So for example, when I had students goal set and reflect at the end of each day, I was giving them a lot of choice in the classroom. I wanted them to be reflective on the choices they either made or didn't make during the day. And I wanted them to set a goal of how they were going to be successful the following day. So the goal of implementing 3 minutes at the end of the class hour to goal set, reflect, and then pack up for the next class period was really to help with transition, help solidify some good reflection moments. And also we revisited these goals and reflections at the beginning of the next class period. So it actually, to be honest, if I was like really, really authentic here, it was to like document a student's brain so that when they came back 24 hours later and forgot everything, they were like speaking to their future selves, which was
Yeah.
so helpful.
Oh yeah, because how many times do kids say like, "What did we do yesterday?" or "Where am I at?" When they start working on something. So 100% true. Like just giving them a spot to remember where they're at.
And rather than shaming them, we were like, oh my God, you don't remember yesterday? How, whatever. They have a lot going on. I mean, granted, we taught middle school. We obviously work with all students K-12, but they have a lot going on, right? They have soccer
Yeah.
practice. They have a parent that's busy. They have a sibling that's bothering them, a best friend fright. I don't expect them to think about my class, but when they come back, let me make my life a little bit easier. Let's transition. Let's be successful. So that was a real use. Other ways and other places you might see goal setting and reflecting be valuable is even at the end of a quiz, at the end of any sort of formative or summative assessment. But that goal isn't to document necessarily their thinking for the next day, but that goal can be, I want to know how my student was feeling as they finished this quiz. I want to know how my students were feeling as they got started on this test, right? Like I know you and I used to joke that when we had a quick like 4-question formative assessment, the first question was a list of emojis, and it was like circle the emoji that matches how you feel right now. Because if a student reflects and identifies that they're feeling really anxious and then doesn't do well on the quiz, that actually gives you a lot of information. Or if they circle it saying super happy, super confident, and then they don't do well on the quiz, that gives you different information. So using goal setting and reflecting at the end of any experience when you know you have a goal, especially at the end of a class hour, can be enormous. And it can be as easy as circling an emoji or having one single prompt to get a student to give you information.
Well, you're absolutely right. Like my 9-year-old in her class, every time they took a test, at the bottom it says, how are you feeling about this content? And as a parent, it was obviously I valued it as a teacher, but as a parent, it was so great because she could come home, she'd show me her, assessment, and she could say, this I thought was super easy, but I missed 3. So like we had a good conversation of like, well, why did you feel confident? Where were your errors? Like it was just such a good moment for her to intentionally pause to realize like my feeling in the moment doesn't match the outcome. And like, how can that change?
And that's a part of teaching. As much as we want students to learn information, we also want them to learn about their physical body. We want them to learn about their brain. So when they say, I feel really confident, and then they don't do well, or they say, I feel really I feel really unconfident, and yet they do really well, that's not only a teachable moment for them in terms of content. We're going to change our language and conversations with those students to be different depending on that information. But then we can also reflect and say, okay, maybe what I'm identifying as nervous anxiousness is maybe how it feels when I feel confident and I just want to do well. And that little shift allows our students to be not only successful in our classroom, but long term.
Absolutely. So when we're thinking through like the goals, I want to come back to something you started with just like Megan brought it up, the idea that the reflection and goal is being a letter to their future self. one of the things that I want to kind of dive into is, I'm assuming at the beginning of the year, you kind of set some parameters or gave some guidelines on what's an appropriate goal. So kind of, can you walk us through that? If someone's thinking, I need to like clean my goal setting up in class, what are some tips that you gave students so that they were helpful?
Yeah, this also goes really well with Brian's comment where he says it's hard to get students to
Yeah.
take it seriously.
Yeah.
Friends, the reality is that if you want students to do well in this and take it seriously, you have to do a lot of pre-work,
Mhm.
pre-thinking about what you want to get out of this. This needs to be extremely simple for students to do. You need to remove all barriers except for what you want to get out of it. So, for
Mhm.
example, the medium, which I know there's so many layers to this conversation. So if I didn't answer your question, we can go back to this. But
Yeah.
the medium in which students reflect is going to affect how successful they are because some students are going to see that as a barrier. So if
Okay.
you have students physically writing on a piece of paper a reflection, then you're going to want that to be as short as possible because no student is going to want to fill out, not even as an adult. We don't want to fill out a
Right.
full page questionnaire every time we do something. That sounds dreadful. But on the flip side, I might be okay using a pen and paper, jotting stuff down. I'm a pen and paper kind of person in terms of my to-do lists.
Yeah,
It's
true.
probably a medium I'm comfortable with. Versus you, Katie, you're so tech focused. You can do everything and have 19 tabs open and not struggle moving around. On the flip side, I also feel like I live on camera for the Teach Better team. It's so easy for me to talk out my things, talk out
Yeah.
my feelings. So when you give students the opportunity to have some choice in the modality and the medium they're using to reflect,
Mhm.
you're making it, you're eliminating one barrier, like just one concept. So
Right.
there's tip
And
tools that help you do this.
but also be mindful of how much time you're willing to dedicate. Because as you're listing some of these, I'm like, well, if you're not already on the computer, if kids aren't already on there, you have to account for kids getting on, logging, getting to whatever platform you're using digitally. If you're wanting them to write something, how long? Like if it was my 5-year-old, it'll take her a half hour to write one sentence. So being mindful of all of those things, like what can your students actually do?
Where's my pen? Why
Yes.
lost my paper? What's
Yes.
the date? Like you just need to identify, it's kind of like dating. Like you have to identify what baggage you're willing to tolerate and what baggage you're like, pass. Because
Yeah.
for me, if a student asks me what the date is, I want to kill them. And it's not because the student isn't amazing. It's because that question haunts my dreams. Well, if you just man the computer, guess what? Timestamps it. No one has to ask. Like, so pick your
Right.
battles. Like pick your battles.
Right. And what's a priority and what are things they've already done or what have you already taught? So I think that's such a good point. I was like the specific way that they are doing the reflection, you have to give thought to. It can't be like this afterthought.
It also can transition. So as you, the
Mm,
educator, are thinking through
mm,
what you want to get out of it, if you are somebody like Megan who's saying, "Ooh, I love the concept of a end of class hour reflection and goal setting, being talking to their future selves," which is extremely helpful for anyone, especially if they're doing a self-paced model, or if you're not, that's really great for character building, all of that.
mhm.
Um, the opportunity to do that is also something you can shift over time. It might take like 5 to 7 minutes, which sounds like a lot, but it might take 5 to 7 minutes for students to open up their laptop, log into this new program, remember where the button is to click, remember what questions they need to answer, fully submit it, and then pack up.
Mhm.
That's frustrating at the beginning of the school year. I used to teach sixth graders and they were like herding cats. So it took a while. But if you remember, we did every single day. Every time you did math, you did it. Even if you did math twice that day, you goal set and reflected twice. That
Mhm.
allowed us then 2 months in to lower that time to 3 minutes. And by the end of the year, and by like the second semester, it was like time to pack up. It took them 30 seconds to do it. They were packed up and moved on. So
Yeah.
it's also where you're willing to give time to gain time later.
Well, right. And like you said, the biggest way to gain your time is the consistency. If you're only doing this kind of whatever you think about it, it will constantly seem like a new idea to students. So it'll always take a while.
Yeah, I
So,
mean, at the beginning of the school year, when you're asking students to go back and reflect on their goal, students are going to take 5 minutes and be like, "Where was that? What's that
yeah.
thing? How is it?" And it infuriates me. But as the year continued, again, 2, 3 months in, I no longer was reminding them to look back at their goal because they knew that that was something that had value to their lives. So they were doing it regardless of if I specifically took time to do it. That was the tool that they then saw the value in and were utilizing.
Yeah. Okay. So when beginning of the year, you're rolling out, you've decided the modality, you've decided how often it's going to be implemented, how you're going to run it. What do you tell students when you're like, we're going to set a goal for our future self? What is like the things you actually say to students?
Yeah. So if we're talking specifically about the end of the year, again, going back to that talking to your future self, it's definitely something that needs to be taught. We can't focus on students like already understanding the value that this will bring. I feel like sometimes we are so hard on students because we only explained it 50% of the way, and how did they not get the rest of the way there themselves? So the big part of this is making it simple, as simple, as simple, as simple as possible. I'm going to emphasize that for all of you. Again, make it simple for you and them. So for me, pick a spot ahead of time where everything's going to be housed. I'm a huge fan of Seesaw. I don't care what you use a free something, and make sure that there is a two-way portal of communication, meaning not a Google Doc, because a Google Doc a student submits and then no longer has access to their answer in most cases. You want to find some way, whether it's a piece of paper, whatever, that they can go back and forth. And I think I said Google Doc, but I meant Google Form.
Yeah.
That's what I meant. Sorry about that. So you need to do that prep ahead of time. You are going to have something that you're going to roll out to them. They're going to be able to document things and see them later on, and you're going to go there every single day. The biggest thing that I would suggest then is the consistency of when is it going to be and what are they actually doing. So asking a student to reflect and then leaving them alone is way too hard. I can't do that to you, Katie. If I was like, hey, can you take 5 minutes and reflect on your day? I might mean reflect on your day, missing that button when we were doing the commercials earlier. And you were like, oh man, I forgot. But you might say, oh, sure, let me reflect on my day. I woke up at 4:00 and my youngest was up and she was crying, but she's like 8 months old, 9 months old now. And I wanted to have a little time with her. I'm like, well, you didn't reflect on what I wanted you to reflect on.
Right.
So,
you have to get some structure.
So I like to stick with 3 to 4 questions every single time we do it. These are the same 3 to 4 questions for the entire year. How did you feel? Or like, better yet, what did you work on today? Give me like the down and dirty, messy version. What'd you do today? Just to actually identify that, like, typically students do a lot more than they actually even know that they've done, or they do a lot less and they need to identify that.
Yep.
Second is, how well did you understand it? We're going like really well, not so good. I don't know what I'm doing. Like super simple. How well did you understand it? What do you need moving forward? And I like to clarify that sometimes depending on the group. What do you need moving forward from yourself? What do you need moving forward from your teacher? What do you need moving forward from your peers? You can kind of identify this, but essentially, what do you need moving forward and what are you going to do about it? Like, what are you going to do tomorrow? So for a lot of students, they did a quick reflection. They come back the next day. And as we're starting class, maybe it's just after the mini lesson or just before, students are looking and they're like, oh my gosh, I did all this stuff yesterday. I felt actually really good with the content. And I need to go take this quiz to prove that I understood it. I'm going to start with the quiz today. So it's just, again, quick check. If these things are actually taking more than like 15 seconds, they're too long, unless it's just a learning process, and then that can take longer.
Oh, I love that. Well, and I love that you gave like a couple things they're doing rather than, like you said, the open-ended reflection isn't going to be super valuable. But I do like the specific questions you gave them because it helps guide them. And then they're, as you said, like as the year progresses, if students want to throw in some other things, or if they want to maybe reflect a little bit bigger than what the questions are, you've established, here's what I am looking for. Here's what the purpose is of the reflection. Danielle threw some questions in, which I also love. We could add that to the list. What are you proud of in your learning today? If you could do this lesson again, what would you change?
What I really love about this, Danielle, and thank you for bringing this up, is that depending on how you goal set and reflect, you also, again, this is like the next layer, which you may not be ready for, but I found so valuable, is I then would share this goal setting and reflecting with parents every single day. The tech tool I used automatically, when a student made a submission to their digital portfolio, their parents got a notification on their phone. What are you proud of learning today? Talk about a good over dinner dialogue for your kid to sit down. I mean, depending on how old your child is, what did you do at school today? Nothing. And you to be able to pull up on your phone to be like, it looks like you're really proud of yourself for being focused today and not letting Dylan distract you. And now you can have a conversation. So while the goal setting and reflecting did do something for me to easily transition in my classroom, it also took care of other things that I don't have to worry about. And to be honest, when I started doing that, my parent communication success went through the roof. I communicated with parents less, but they felt more updated, if that makes sense.
No, it totally does, which isn't something we directly said, but if you are wanting, whatever you're wanting to use, if it's going to be something you want parents to have access to, there's got to be some education to parents too. Like you use Seesaw, you communicated how they access that, downloading the app on their phone, whatever. You have to think that through too. So if it's something that you're like, I want parents to see the goal setting and the reflections, then make sure that parents know how to get to it so that you can have the success of they feel like they're getting information more than you're actually providing it.
Well, and that's the struggle. I mean, all of this is, as much as we know this is a good educational practice, this is upfront work that once you do the upfront work, you're going to not think about it again. So you need to think through what your medium's going to be. You're going to need to think through how that medium is going to serve your goal, your initial goal. And then you need to think through, is there anything else I can attach to it to make my life a little bit easier? And sometimes the answer is going to be no. Sometimes the answer will be yes. But again, if this is a consistent routine, this is then something when all said and done, you can put it in your email footer where, helpful links here. This is your students' goal setting reflecting every single day. Don't forget it's here. These are things you can incorporate because they're not going to change. I think the hardest part about teaching for me is when every day feels like a new start. Like I need routine. I need consistency.
Yeah. And kids do too, honestly. And we know that, kids prefer routine. And I think you've given a lot of great ideas as far as like questions and platforms, all that. But I also, I kind of want to hear your thoughts on how do teachers who like me, like we've had many conversations about this. I couldn't figure out how to do something like tangible. I digital platform wasn't going to work. The paper I lost, it was like, I couldn't get that off the ground. So is there value in students taking a minute to maybe just internalize it or like a classroom reflection? Like, can we talk through those teachers like me, I guess, who couldn't get something like a thing? Does that make sense? I'm like, I feel like I'm not making
completely. If, for example, I think the thing for you, Katie, wasn't that you couldn't get the thing. It was that you had a different goal and you were trying to make it fit into the Teach Better mold of making it really personalized and an intentional moment. And every student should do it on their own. Your goal was just to be like, overall, how's the class feeling? And I want to remind them that we all have the same thing we're working towards. So for you, it was at the beginning or at the end of class was, how are we feeling? Like, give me like a thumbs up, thumbs down, share with your friends, like maybe write me a little note and go throw it on my desk before you leave, because you weren't looking for this to necessarily help students talk to their future self. You as the teacher were trying to collect data, which is different. Like that's a totally different goal. On the flip side, you also wanted to establish that there's an overall general goal that students should be working towards, specifically if using a self-paced model. Typically there's a teacher goal. You were using that time to emphasize the teacher goal, which is again, a completely different idea. So you being able to take that time to be like, our intention today is to try and get to this point in our learning. So it's more so me reminding you, turn and talk to the people around you, write a little self-note to yourself, whatever, give me thumbs up, thumbs down to be able to say, is this obtainable? Because when you have students that say, yep, I'm going to reach that identified goal, I'm in a good spot, or no, it's not even close. That's you as a teacher collecting information saying, all right, I'm going to go to Susie. She looks like she's not feeling confident today. I'm going to go to Ben. He has a question. And then you're able to transition into your day from a teacher's lens. So this is all about knowing what you want to get out of it and not just doing it because some brunette on screen said you should do it. Don't do stuff like that. That's stupid.
Well, and you're absolutely right. I mean, that's the first thing, which we kind of started with. Like, what's your goal for yourself of wanting to implement this and then navigating it? So if you're someone who's like, I want kids to do the reflection on their own work for their, journey in education, then that it has to be intentionally driven by them for them. But if you're looking for information kind of as a reflection for the whole class, or the whatever space it is, then you have to kind of drive it a little bit more. But I think there's value in both, honestly.
Completely. And that's why I don't want to like diminish. If you are just implementing the concept of students being reflective, you are already on the right journey.
Yes.
I think the first thing I started with wasn't the end of class reflection and goal setting really worked for me once I identified my intention.
Yeah.
I think one of the best reflection pieces I ever implemented was at the beginning, at the end of the quizzes, using that emoji thing. And I literally put it at the beginning. There was however many questions. And then it was at the end. It was the same copy and paste. It always looked the same. There was always the same 5 emojis unless I felt really creative that day. And all that did was identify what the students were feeling. And when the emojis were different, I just got so much data as a teacher, like the data that I felt like I could use, not just you got this wrong because you rounded, but like, oh, you're feeling anxious. Oh, you're feeling super confident. Like that gives me so much good information on how I'm going to then support you in a personalized way. So start small, start simple.
Well, yeah, that's something that you could easily throw on every sort of assessment you're giving. But what I liked is that you said it gave you information, but like you said before, there's so much opportunity to have a teachable moment, because I know that when we would look at assessments, and I'm sure you had similar papers where it was like maybe the reflection didn't match the content of what they saw. I would sometimes like write a little note above the emoji, or I did like smiley faces, but it was like, why do you think your feelings were this way, or this didn't quite, like this doesn't match, what could you tell me, or what's the moment of reflection? Like there's so much communication you can put simply by them circling that symbol.
It was so good during conferences because I would always have those same students that would circle like anxious, sad, scared, and then they do really well. And so my conference with them wasn't about the quiz. They clearly did well. They're ready to move forward, like go ahead. But on the flip side, it was like, Katie, I need you to start seeing that you're a really strong math student. And whoever in your past made you feel like you weren't, like, you're clearly beyond that. And so you're really able to have those personalized conversations. And that's the goal of any goal setting and reflection, is to be able to gather information to be better as a teacher. And if you're just doing it to do it, then you're completely wasting time. Make it easy on yourself.
Well, yeah, because we both can attest to, we did it just to do it, and it fell short, and there was no value in it, right? And like Danielle said, consistency and purposeful protocol is so important, and that's absolutely true. So find something that sticks. And I think, now we're in summer, sometimes we have more space in our head. Reflect on yourself. What have you already tried, and what worked and what didn't? Because both of us can tell you the list of things that didn't work and why it never stuck. But then we both kind of were like, okay, this is what I need out of it, and this is how I'm going to get it to stick. And then, we adapted with our students, and we got feedback from them. And so if you are thinking, I need to improve my goal setting reflection game, start small. If you have not done anything, start small. Put something on your assessments, or put something on, do you do like a weekly check-in? I know some teachers do like a bell ringer type sheet, which we talked on Tuesday. Don't do bell ringers, do something fun. But, is there something that you can give them where they reflect? Go ahead.
Yeah, I think to that point, also thinking through like, what information do you already gain from students and what information do you not? And is it okay that you don't have that information, or is that information in a perfect world you wish you had? Because maybe that's the spot to start reflection, rather than doing reflection because we told you it's good, and there's endless journals and articles that say it's so effective for student success. Let's just try and see if we could solve a little problem in your world, because teaching's hard enough. So can we take the guesswork out of something, and can we just make your life easier and then continue to benefit? Because when your life's easier, you're going to be a better thinker, you're going to be more effective, and you're going to be more innovative.
And we want students to be a part of their learning journey, and we want them to do something. We don't want to have to always provide them the information of here's how you're doing in the class, here's what you need to improve. Let them take some of that, because sometimes I think we're really surprised what is going on in students' head as far as that reflection piece, right? Like they can tell you, oh yeah, I totally am going to bomb this because I didn't study for this, or I haven't been doing anything. So give them that opportunity, but let them know that their reflection matters in what their next steps are. So, so good. Good morning, Brad. Thanks for joining us this morning. Ray, what are okay, so we're kind of wrapping on the other half of this segment. Someone's sitting here thinking, okay, I've tried some different things, or I'm going to change. Like, they're just sitting in their moment of reflection. What are a few things that you're like, go do this right now? Meaning right now could be when they go back to school, but what are some quick things that you're like, do this right now, it'll make a big difference?
Quick things right now. What we're talking about, especially over the last 3 days, but even today, we have free Academy courses in Teach Better Academy 4. So what you can do right now is plan your next pool day to stick it in your headphone and just listen, because thinking through this, being exposed to the information and sleeping on it a few days is actually going to do you so well. Don't rush into this. There's no point. I want to make sure I'm continuing to emphasize this has no value to you until we identified the value to you. I don't want you to jump in and start doing weekly reflections that are a complete waste of time. Your time is way more valuable than that. Second thing is I would start reflecting on what questions you might want to have answered. What goals do you actually want to see with reflection and goal setting? And then the third thing is, whether you know the answers to the 2 suggestions I've given you or not, I would love to have you connect with somebody on the team and talk through your personalized classroom. The reason Katie and I were able to have a 45-minute conversation on this is because we've seen a full gamut of what this looks like, not only in our own classrooms, but in classrooms around the US and Canada. But the reality is that depending on who you are, where you teach, what your dilemmas are, this is going to be a lot of stuff where you only need one small portion of it. So finding time to hop on a call with me or someone else on the team, just to brainstorm like what might be the best fit for you, would be a really easy first step.
Yeah, absolutely right. I'm pretty sure you have an Academy course. We have blogs out there. We have a ton of stuff. If you go just to our website, you can type in the search bar, tons of stuff will pop up for you. But yeah, you're right. Just kind of being intentional about the changes you're going to make, whether it's the beginning of your class, the meat and potatoes of your class, or the goal setting reflection, really all of those things.
I will say the other big shout I want to give, and I know I mentioned this earlier, we are partnering with Cami and doing a webinar on July 22nd, which is this coming Monday. It's free registration. You do have to register though. So make sure it's been all over social media. So go grab that link. If you're friends with me on Facebook, I even just posted it. So go check that out. The one reason I emphasize that though, is because the teacher that works for Cami that is doing the webinar with me is a Teach Better family member and a Mastery Learning Grid fan. Awesome. So she does goal setting and reflecting. She does progress monitoring. She does that's just who she is as an educator. Good. So this isn't just us partnering with Cami so we can see a cool tech resource. This is actually looking at somebody in our community and getting trained on a free tool that works really well with most likely what you're currently already doing or aspiring to do in your classroom. So that would be a really good thing to pop into. That will also be recorded and saved in the Academy, but you need to go register.
Awesome. Well, and like you said, if you are watching it, not only maybe you'll grab some tips and tricks on how to implement it, but then you also get that tech tool that goes alongside it. So another great resource to use. Ray, this has been such a good week. I'm so glad we did this series. It's been nice to really kind of take the, whether it's 45 minutes, 75 minutes, whatever that time looks like with students, really break it apart, because we really do have 3 pieces of any given class period or lesson. And so it's been fun to kind of talk through all those little things. But if you are needing any further support, we are here to support you in any way possible. You can reach out to either one of us. It's our name at teachbetter.com, or you could throw us a message in, one of our socials. But we want you to do better. We want you to continue to improve and reflect. And so if you need any support, we've got an entire team of teachers that are willing to help you. We've also got Academy and tons of awesome resources. So please make sure that you check all those things out. We are so excited to see what this next school year brings for you and all that you've got in store. The fact that you tuned into us today tells us that you are willing to be a little bit better than you were yesterday, which we always love. So Ray, thank you so much for sharing your insight and expertise. I know this has been, it's always fun to talk through this, and it's been a good conversation. So I appreciate you. Anything else you want to share with the community?
No, we hope you have an amazing week. Happy Thursday. Have an amazing weekend. Hopefully it's not too hot and sticky and gross.
Yes. Enjoy the rest of whatever summer you have, and we'll see you next time.
Bye, guys.